you have to mix above the loudest thing on the platform, which is the drums. If a lot of you have done recordings right out of your board, you may notice that it sounded so good on Sunday, but I don't hear any drums in the recording. How come? Well, because on Sunday, the drums were 80 feet in front of you, and they didn't need to bring them up in the PA system. So this is our loudest thing, and you need to mix everything else above that. And I'm sure that a lot of you find that either you try to mix under it, and people are complaining about the drums, or you mix properly, and they're complaining about the volume of the entire thing. So let's talk about some low-tech solutions. Anybody using Shields in their churches? Okay. It can be an elegant solution, all the way up into spending thousands and thousands of dollars on those drummer apartment buildings. Have you seen those? Roof, ceiling, air conditioning, little slot where you put the food through. Yeah. What I don't like about Shields, and this is my second soapbox, is the platform is filled with worship leaders. I love this concept of a lead worshiper that's sort of steering the ship, but everybody on the platform is a worship leader. Because okay, we'll just have church here. You don't know what it is from the platform that is going to engage someone in your congregation and bring them into worship. It might be the woman in the choir, third row in, sixth from the top, because of her countenance that day. And one of the most engaging worship leaders on the platform is a worshiping drummer. Okay, this is going to cause some problems. This is why I love electronic kits, okay? Because it allows you to bring one of your most engaging worship leaders back in front of their congregation. A lot of drummers have problems with electronic kits. If you haven't tried them out lately, make sure you try out some of the current electronic kits. One of the things that will help your drummer is when they stop looking at it as an acoustic kit replacement and look at it as an instrument all its own. Because what you cannot do on a Sunday morning with an acoustic kit is play an oak custom kit on your first song and a birch custom kit on your second song and tuned Latin percussion on your third song. So when you start looking at what an electronic kit can do, not only as far as sounds, but starting and stopping loops, things like that, they can be a really incredible addition to what you're doing on a Sunday morning. And they sound really good. They've already been mic'd up and all that sort of stuff. And you're not limiting the drummer by trying to get him to play softer. That is a real skill. Anybody notice that when you kind of get your drummer to try to play softer, time might go out the window and feel might go out the window and things like that. And there's other things you can do. Make sure you at least try, hot rods or blast sticks, the bundled nylon sticks. Again, they don't feel exactly like a drum kit, like an acoustic kit might respond, but the volume is going to be much easier for your front of house engineer to deal with. But do consider, at least take a look at, digital kits, if for no other reason, to get that worship leader back in front of his congregation. I do love that aspect of them. You ever run into somebody that just says, I have to have that volume to worship? I have to have it screaming loud. I've got a thought on that, but I do want to share one concept with you that will apply to so many things in what you're doing on a Sunday morning. And it's the inverse square law. Okay, you do not have to remember that. What I want you to remember about anything that makes sound is that if you cut the distance in half, okay, it doesn't get twice as loud. It gets 4 times louder. Okay, most of the feedback that takes place in your church is from a microphone held out here. Announcements. All right, today we're having fellowship all. And it's funniest thing that sometimes when people do this and the sound man starts cranking it up so you can hear it and it starts feeding back, what's the first thing they do? Or they just drop it into a monitor wedge. That really takes off. So the point is, you can use like inverse square law if you want to impress people. But what I want you to remember, by going from 4 inches to 2 inches at your mouth with your microphone, your sound man turns you down to 1/4 the volume at front of house. Okay, that's a huge difference. Okay, same with guitar amps, which is what we were talking about. If your guitarist has his amp 10 feet behind him, If he moves it 5 feet behind him, he turns it down to 1/4 the volume for him to hear the same thing where he's standing. Okay? So placement of the instruments and stuff is very, very important. There's some other things you can do with guitar amps if they just simply must have, their double Marshall stack up there in your church of 60. You can run your amp in a separate room. Anybody do that? Okay. It's a very great, don't put it in the cry room or the nursery. That's not a good choice. But if you can put it somewhere else and control it and mic it up back there, get the amps closer to you. A lot of amps you can put in front of you and kick them back so that they are slanted up at you. Again, once you get it closer, you're cutting the volume that you need to output way, way, way down. Okay. If you haven't tried some of the current modeling technologies, check them out. Because that, again, is a very, very elegant solution that allows you to get some of the sounds that you want as a guitarist, okay, without necessarily having to have an amp up there. I just want to use this as an example. This is a THR 100 single channel head. And this is kind of indicative of what some amps are becoming these days. This is a Yamaha brand new product, and it is an extremely high-tech amp, but it's kind of geared at the pedal board folks. It's kind of funny. It doesn't even have a preset on it. You go to any of these knobs, and this amp is going to do exactly what you expect it to do. But you can choose different output tubes and all that kind of stuff. But what is really unique about this is in the direct output of this, which is kind of what we're talking about, being able to run the direct sound of your amplifier out to the board, is you can do impulses of some of your favorite speaker cabinets and load those into the XLR output. So you're getting exactly the sound you want direct at front of house as you're looking for from a cabinet like this. So very, very cool. Anybody using grand piano in their church? Okay. These can put out some volume too, can't they? And this is not really as much of an issue. The adoption level on digital pianos is pretty high. That's not really an issue. But be aware that if you're miking this up and you've got it full sticked or even half sticked, it's acting like a full horn picking up all the stuff that's coming on the platform and being picked up by those microphones. So be aware of that. Maybe you want to mic it up and close the lid. Maybe you want to swing it around so that the lid is facing backwards, although it's kind of hard to beat that look, isn't it? Okay. Another thing to consider, and I mention this because this is not a cheap solution, but the Yamaha Disclavier, it's a playback piano. So you can so it's a real grand piano, and it will capture what you play and can play it back. We don't like to say player piano because it goes so far beyond what player pianos used to be able to do that it's just ridiculous. But some of the really crazy benefits are if you have you're rehearsing your choir, something like that, you can have somebody come in and record piano parts and then play them back from the piano without the accompanist there. And you can also do some of the ultimate recording is because the instrument will put out MIDI, and you can track the MIDI from the piano and then come back in after the live worship recording and retrack that piano so there's nothing else going on the platform. It's the exact same performance, but you can get just a beautiful recording of just the piano that you can then mix back in with what was going on. If you're really far down the road, and you've got satellite churches and things like that, you can actually have somebody playing one of these at one church and another one duplicating what they're doing at one of their satellite churches. See me afterwards. I'd love to sell you 2 of those. So I think that would be perfect. Wedges on the platform are an entire other PA system pointed in the wrong direction. Okay? I know people love to have their wedges or their worship leader with their 2 wedges, and it can be the most. How many of you have walked into your church and the monitors are running and you have all the volume you could possibly need, the mains are not up, and there is 0 intelligibility, right? So I wanted to talk a little bit about the whole concept of personal monitoring mixing. How many are using in-ear monitors now? Okay, so this is pretty good. That's a great adoption rate right now. The folks that kind of started that off with a pretty elegant solution was Aviom. a digital network that you could actually usually plug in from your analog console. It would create a digital snake, and then everybody could have their own 16 by 2 stereo mixer. Well, things have evolved a little bit, and I want to talk with you about some concepts. Now, it just so happens that we have a Yamaha TF up here. This is the TF series. There's 3 of those. There's a TF1, TF3, and a TF5. And you're talking at a price point that is very, very accessible for a lot of smaller churches, medium churches. This is a 16-channel board. There's a 24-channel. There's a 32-channel. And one of the things you're looking at when you start looking at a digital console is the concept of using a digital snake. There is a box that would go on the stage that you would plug all your stuff in, and you would connect it to this board with Cat5. Cat5 is just regular network cable. You can buy it at Home Depot. And suddenly, rather than trying to pull a 2-inch copper snake through a 1 3/4-inch conduit on a Saturday afternoon, somebody's done that, I can hear, yeah. Now you're running Cat5, but the thing about having a digital network is you are able to distribute that signal very freely in wherever you need to. If you need to record, we were recording on a Mac over here that just plugged into that exact same network over Cat5 using kind of standard switches that you would find, for doing network switching. I wanted to show you one of the apps that we have. So this is called Stage Mix, and these are not new concepts. You've seen that you can do this, but the fact that you can do this kind of mixing in a $3,000 plus or minus mixer is pretty crazy. Because now, oh my goodness. Okay, here's a really bad soapbox. They're going to pull me off on that one. How many of you are mixing in your church in the middle of the sanctuary 2/3 of the way out into the house? One, that's about right. I'm surprised at that. How many are in the balcony? Okay. How many against the back wall? Okay. How many in a corner? How many in the back somewhere behind a little sliding glass window where you stick your head out and listen to what's going on? Okay. That territory where you should be is prime real estate in a church, but you can't change the fact that that's where you should be. If you want it to sound good in the house, you mix in the house. Okay, there's not a concert you go to that you pay big money for that they don't understand that. Okay, if you want it to sound good in the house, you mix in the house. If you ever have trouble with pastor sometime about understanding that, you should have him preach from the parking lot one Sunday and see how well that goes. Yeah. This is a nice solution. If you are just stuck in a less than opportune area where you're trying to mix from, you can actually use this app and control the board, including input levels, including EQ. It's actually got a real-time analyzer built into that. That's kind of cool. You can do all the same control of the EQ that you would from the console, including being able to change Q or bandwidth by pinching the screen. The other thing about a digital console, it usually gives you much more flexibility when it comes to EQ and effects, things like that. An analog console, if you wanted to have a compressor for a channel, you bought it. If you needed another compressor for another channel, you called up your Sweetwater sales engineer, and he would send you another compressor. And if you needed a third one, you did that again. These consoles come with this EQ and this compression and these gates and these effects on every single channel. The fact that you can actually go to your monitor mixes and go up and actually stand with your talent on the platform and mix their this is if you're mixing monitors from front of house, and actually stand with them in front of their wedge and actually mix their monitors for them. Because how many times have you had a conversation with your front of house engineer where you're saying, I need it brighter, I can't hear it, and he's saying, I can't give you any more bright. I don't know what's wrong with you. And well, yeah, you're a jerk. And yeah, well, I was, and it falls apart like and then it turns into a Jesus culture rehearsal. No. I'm going to hear about that one. How often has the guy come up and stood with you and go, wow, your horn is blown? A lot of people up on the platform don't even know what's in that box, let alone there's a horn blown. So just the fact that you can come up with somebody and hear what they're hearing in their monitors and talk to them about what they need is pretty amazing. But that's still counting on your front of house person. This is another thing that you start to see in some of these consoles is the ability to mix your own monitors from a device like an iPhone. So now you're actually able to control this console yourself from up at the platform. It doesn't require extra hardware. You've got auxiliaries coming out of the board. And all you do at the other end is put a really simple headphone amp. And those can be had for $25, $30. There are 20 auxiliary sends on the TF. 8 of them are mono sends, and 6 of them are stereo. And those 6 are what you would usually use for in-ear monitors. So you could have folks up on the platform that are able to control their own mixes. Being able to control pan is also very important, because to get things out of the center and into different parts of what you're listening to, into different ears, can help to make things easier to discern, and you don't even have to have it turned up as loud if you do that. And here's another kind of a cool thing. If, for instance, maybe you have a lot of drum tracks that you're sending up to the platform, you have the ability to group those. So here's my drums, so it's all my drums, but if I need to break those out, like I need a little bit more snare or something, I can open that group up, and there's all my instruments in there, and I can change the relative level of that snare. So you can actually group up your singers, group up the band, and have you, and like with 3 faders, you could very easily, in the middle of a service, kind of adjust your mix as far as what you're hearing up there on the platform. The point is, those wedges can be extremely loud on a Sunday. So that's certainly something to consider, is in-ear monitoring and the ability to mix your own mix. Because that frees up your front of house engineer to focus on what they're doing as far as trying to make you sound better.